My name is Todd Thompson. I'm from Proteus Digital Health, currently the Vice President of Corporate Development. I've been in the Bay Area doing medical device development in startup companies for 23 years.
I think it's an extremely exciting platform that Proteus has put together, and maybe just following on Kent's presentation, maybe we can touch on some of the trends. You know, it's obvious the aging demographics that are going on, the increased pressure on healthcare to decrease costs, and maybe you can quickly touch on some trends that Proteus is really trying to address, and it is very attentive to.
Well, the trend of chronic disease growth is one that we think about a lot at Proteus. The World Health Organization has said that by the year 2030, the chronic disease in the over 65 population will more than double. And obviously, everybody's getting older, so we know that population itself is growing. So it's a growing problem. And it's a problem not just for the patients, but it's also a problem for their caregivers. And their caregivers, as Ken mentioned, are you and I. As we grow older, our parents are obviously a lot older, and many of them struggling with chronic disease, and it's our job to help them out. They don't see their doctors very often, and oftentimes their care is day to day. It's not once every 6 months. The other issue is that this chronic disease epidemic is killing our healthcare system. The costs are overwhelming, they're growing, and we need to develop systems that actually can attack this problem in a different way. Our health system today is designed to manage acute care. It does that really well. I worked my entire career on devices that are designed for acute use, and we we do surgical procedures. Those are acute procedures, but you know, the chronic disease epidemic is something that people have to live with every day, and we have to provide tools that allow them to better manage their own care. This is the only way we're actually going to be able to deliver more health care at less cost.
Great, thank you. I think there was a study by IMS or ISM that came out that talked about the wearable wireless market evolving into about $6 billion by 2016. So this is a really large marketplace that's evolving here. You know, maybe we should show a quick video to kind of give a background of what the platform looks like, and when we go for that. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this too.
First up, pills. Now, thank you. We all know it can be a challenge to care for the elderly, the insane, and the insanely elderly. It's hard to make sure that they are taking their meds. Thankfully, the FDA has approved a new digital device that's inserted into a pill to solve this problem. For more, we turn to the most objective news source, a promotional video made by the manufacturer. Jim?
Our system starts with a tiny sensor that goes in your medicine. Remember how a potato battery works? 2 metals and a wet potato can power a light bulb. The sensor works the same way. 2 metals generate power when they get wet in your stomach. So it's literally powered by you. The patch, which you wear on your skin, knows when you've ingested your sensor-enabled medicine, and also captures your activity and rest patterns. Then it relays that information to your phone, where our application connects you to your support network.
That's right. The pill sends out a message once it has traveled into Grandma's digestive tract, which is also the plot of the most disturbing magic school bus ever. Now, according to the pill's manufacturer, Proteus Digital Health, the sensor can help patients suffering from diseases of the central nervous system, including schizophrenia, because nothing is more reassuring to a schizophrenic than a corporation inserting sensors into your body and feeding information to all those people watching your every move. Now, unfortunately, embedding a sensor in every pill is expensive. That's why Prescott Pharmaceuticals has partnered with Prescott Pharmalectricals to develop a low-cost alternative. Introducing Univaxa. Inside this box is a digital alert system made from cutting-edge technology we found in an abandoned Radio Shack. Now, it couldn't be simpler. You just swallow the tablet, which is a tablet, then activate Bluetooth to your desktop, by performing a hard restart, holding down your navel and your left nipple until you taste the red light. And it's all powered by eating a box of baking soda and chugging a bottle of vinegar. The resulting volcano sends a signal to an orbiting satellite which relays your medical condition to everyone on the Dish Network.
So, obviously, Todd, as a serious medical device developer, you know you've really made it when you're on the Colbert Report. So, but you had some interesting feedback from this whole session.
Yeah, I mean, we love this as well, and I think that what's great about a video like this is it actually is free advertisement for sure, but it also helps people to sort of look at what we're doing, understand our technology. It was nice of him to show our entire video. But I think it's helpful to raise these questions, and he raised a good question about the people who living with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. And the actual fact is that people living with disease today have no tools to help them live with the disease. Many of these people actually live with the disease. They live relatively normal lives. They take their medicine. As long as they take their medicine, they do fine. They manage their other health issues. They have to get enough sleep. They have to reduce their stress. There's things they have to manage. And today they have no tools to help them, with the exception of maybe a nagging parent who calls them multiple times a day to see if they've actually taken their medication. So our system is something that they are very excited about, because our system can actually provide them with information about whether or not they actually took their medication. It can provide them with information about whether or not they're sleeping enough and the trends in their sleep patterns. And this information is also something that's available to their parents or their caregivers. And so their caregivers, when they actually call them, can actually have a conversation with them about their lives and not about their illness. And so we've in our conversations with these patients, they are overwhelmingly excited about our technology and can't wait to actually have it.
Well, obviously in a consumer space, you get some questions about really what the system's all about. Maybe we should start kind of our first theme in getting into what is the group and variety of different technologies. It's a pretty wide group of technologies that you've brought to bear on the problem, and maybe you can just kind of go through that. We have a nice little graphic up here, and give us more insights on all the different pieces that you put together. Obviously, it's not a box with wires.
No. So this slide is similar to the stuff that Ken showed. I think that the difference for us is from the beginning, we've looked at this from the patient's perspective, at the user, and we're looking at it as the user, as a consumer of the product. So we're not talking about medical devices here, we're talking about consumers, we're talking about you and I. Today our system is made up of three major components. The first is the ingestible sensor, which you saw in the video. That particular sensor, when you swallow it, it turns on, it sends a signal. That signal records the event of you swallowing that device. That signal, or that device today, is approved by the FDA. It's cleared, and that device can be, at your doctor's direction, co-ingested with your other medication, and it can mark the event of ingestion of your medication. That particular information is then relayed to the wearable monitor, which today is in the form of an adhesive patch that you wear on your body, on your torso. That wearable monitor collects the information, decodes it, and it can decode, if you take 5 pills, the system will know you took 5 individual pills, because each of those devices, the ingestible sensors, has its own unique ID. That wearable monitor also collects information about your physiology, so activity, sleep patterns, ECG information. And all that information together is timestamped, and that is then relayed to a mobile device, like a cell phone or a tablet computer. And that device is the piece that provides a linkage to the internet, or to the cloud, but also provides the user with feedback around their health patterns.
So as far as this data, the value or the benefit directly to the patient of the data itself, is that just self-aware? Is it just collecting data, or what's the value there?
Well, that's the real difference here, is that we believe that this system has the opportunity to provide an unprecedented view into people's personal health management. So the ability to be able to actually see on a on a daily basis, your trends in terms of your sleep patterns, your activity, how well you're doing with your medication adherence, and also to allow your caregivers, I'm talking about your family members, to be able to see that information as well, can change the whole dynamic of the healthcare equation. Because we believe with the applications in this technology, we can engage patients more. It's not just about data. Just taking a measurement and having that measurement go somewhere else is meaningless to someone. And if they don't understand the context of that measurement, the information, and and how their trends can be affected by their behavior, their medication adherence, if they understand how those things are related, they can actually develop healthier habits and sustain behavior change, which is the goal.
Interesting, one step closer to personalized medicine and having that data at least monitor and manage whether it's chronic or wellness or whatever. Maybe we can get into kind of the next theme, which is the approach to this marketplace is quite a bit different. This is a consumer-driven, consumer-centric, patient as the consumer type of marketplace. Maybe you can go into a little more detail for the audience about so what's the different approach that Proteus uses here rather than your typical bottom-up medical device development serial type of process or more clinician, nurse technician type of approach.
So we believe strongly that the transition in the way services are delivered that is already occurring and has occurred in the other industries from typical services to the digital platforms and delivery is going to happen and is happening in healthcare. And so this is going to allow information and services to be delivered to patients more effectively and more efficiently. Patients are going to become better educated about their health issues. We already have, obviously, available to us on the internet today, lots of information about disease conditions, and I'm sure many of us in this room have looked up various things to understand what's going on with ourselves or our children or other things. And so there's lots of information available, and this transition is going to make that information available to us, and we'll be much more educated consumers and people living with disease. That will change the dynamic and the conversation that we have, not only with our family members around our illness, but also with our caregivers, and especially the professional caregivers. Because we're going to be going into the doctor's office understanding not only our disease better, but also how our behaviors affect our disease. And the conversation we have with the doctor is going to be based on real data about not only how I'm doing. So I wasn't feeling well here, and you can see it in my information. You can see I wasn't sleeping well, I was sleeping with pillows. Or doctor, you can see I actually am taking my medication. I'm not lying to you. It really is there, and there's something wrong. And so it's an important change in the conversation. I think that's going to make a big difference. So the key there is then you have to start the product development process by focusing first on the patient. And so the traditional medical device world focuses certainly on usability. But that usability is focused primarily on a small group of KOLs, key opinion leaders, a few nurses, or whoever's going to actually be the final consumer of that product. And they do testing, and there are obviously regulatory requirements for that usability. But often we don't go beyond making sure the devices are safe and effective in the context they're used. In the consumer world, we have to go well beyond that. We have to make products that delight people.
Right. I think there's some studies out that say that there's a 70% increase in just getting the right data rather than kind of a manual type of diary. Just having this ongoing monitoring visualized is increasing compliance by like 70%. But it goes a lot further than that, doesn't it? I mean, in order for a patient consumer to engage, or an advocate of the patient to engage, I've heard Proteus use the word delight, which is really interesting. Coming from someone that's been heavily involved in therapeutic type of device development, delightful isn't usually one of those words that ends up in a customer requirements document. Go into that a little bit deeper. I think it's kind of provocative that there's almost a mandate that the device, the interaction, the usability needs to be delightful.
So I'll take one step backwards and talk first about how they're different. So in the traditional medical device world, the devices are used by people who are educated and trained in the use of that device. And that device is also used in a very often controlled and acute setting. So they engage with the device at specific times for a specific purpose. And oftentimes they'll be willing to deal or sort of live with a device that's not quite as usable as it could be if it meets the medical need. It works in the procedure context, it's safe to use. They'll manage that because it's not something they have to interact with on a daily, hourly basis. In the consumer world, we want products that people will engage with on a regular basis. This isn't just about data. This is about them taking an active role in their own healthcare. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is that if we give them tools that they want to come back and use. There's reasons that people use Facebook every day. There's reasons that they use their social media tools. It's because they find something there they like and it means something to them. And so as we do this development, we focus on trying to take that information, all the data that we collect, and bring it to the user in a way that actually provides them value and engages them, and or creates a linkage between them and their loved ones that's different because they can have a different conversation.
So interesting, yeah, I think Ken touched on it a little bit as well, is that the current trends are starting to align so that there is this recognized value, there's this utility, there's this engagement, there's approachability, delight in approaching this market segment. So before I touch on the sort of the last theme, if anyone has any questions already written down, please, or if you haven't, please write them down. If you've got them, just raise your hand here in the next couple of minutes. Rebecca will come around and collect them. This really is meant to be an interactive. It's a good chance to ask Todd whatever question that you want to ask him. But the last theme that I want to get into is this ambidextrous challenge between serious medical device, something you ingest, something you wear that's monitoring your physiological data, with this consumerization, this consumer patient, and very consumer-centric type of approach to the marketplace. Maybe you can give an audience the innovation approach that Proteus uses is pretty unique. I deal with a lot of different people doing innovation, and Proteus stands out on how they really approach this marketplace, both from innovation process, but also the go-to-market strategy. Maybe you can give a snapshot of both of those areas, starting with innovation, and I'll interrupt you someplace to get into strategic go-to-market.
Okay. So the system here as we show, is quite generic. And just one thing I want to point out here is that we focused very much on the left side of this graph, or this chart. The idea here is that we have a few really key devices that we built. These are the pieces that provide the unique information, some of the things that no one else can do. And we focus a lot on the patient. Now, because we have a system that's connected, there's no reason why we can't add other devices into the system as needed, depending on the disease condition. So weight scales, glucose meters, other types of telemetric devices. But the key is that as we develop this, the difference between this particular consumer device and a more traditional consumer device is we can't build just one. So, Apple built an iPhone, and they made two colors. They made it black and they made it white. But it's the same phone that everyone uses and many people love. For Proteus, we're building a system here that the general components of this system are the same. But the way that we deliver the value to each patient is going to be different, because whether you have heart failure or diabetes or schizophrenia, bipolar, the information that's of interest to you, that's valuable in your care, and also will engage you, is going to be different. And so we have to build a flexible system.
Right. Those use cases are very different. The environment they're used in the patient population is very different.
That's right. And so, so that drives one of the main themes within our organization, is that the system has to be flexible. And so the other thing is that because of our technology and the fact that it's going to be linked to medication, we're a partner-driven company. We see the most value of our technology when the pharmaceuticals that are on the market today become digital. And so we partner with pharmaceutical companies. Today we're partnered with two of the largest in the world, Novartis and Otsuka. And we're actively developing digital versions of some of their medicine to be released into the market very soon. And so that partnering also adds a requirement of flexibility, because each of these partners is planning to use this technology to support their customers and their patients. And again, these are different patient populations. And so it means that we have to create wearable monitors that can provide features that they want. We have to provide a mobile platform that has the hooks that allow them to build their own applications to support their patient population and to manage the information the way they need to. Excuse me for a second. And so I think that's the reason for this push to flexibility.
Right. So one of the things that I see a lot of when working together with you is that there is a tremendous amount of capability and capacity for a very wide variety of different technologies, different use environments, whether it's different hospital systems or insurance systems. Systemically, there's a whole variety of differences that you have to deal with. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that partnering strategy, that go-to-market strategy, and how to fill out that broad range of capabilities and the capacity for doing a whole bunch of things. Very different than typical medical device. Here's your unmet need and a pretty straight line target to include different features and different functionality. This is a much wider range and converges on an area depending on what those needs are. Maybe elaborate a little bit more to those shows. Yeah.
Well, I think if you look at this chart again, you'll see that there's technology in this chart that sort of hits on many different areas that no one company will ever be an expert in every area, especially a small startup company. And Proteus is still a fairly small company. And even when we work with these large pharmaceutical companies, they focus on one thing. They focus on making drugs. And they have very little experience and understanding on building applications or even dealing with data in the cloud. It's just not something that they're terribly familiar with. And so what we do, which we believe is the right way to do it, is to focus on and build the expertise inside for the things we think are really, really important. And so the two pieces on the left, the adhesive-based patch, the wearable monitor, and the ingestion sensor are obviously core Proteus technology. The ingestion sensor is an invention, and we have some core capability around MEMS processing and as well as a high level of expertise in hardware development that allows us to do those things, and we think that they're critical. We've also focused heavily and built a team around user experience, usability, making and creating products that people are engaged in, that they find delightful. And so we hired an expert and we built a team. And as Ken said, we focus a lot on the psychology of it and behavior change, behavior modification, helping to engage people. And that's a little bit of technology. It's a lot about how people act and react to information. And then for the other pieces of the technology solution, we partner with companies who know how to do the various pieces really well. We're certainly not going to reinvent data management. There's billions of dollars that have been spent to develop tools and ways of managing data securely and sending it from point A to point B. We're not going to reinvent that. We're just going to basically, hop on board and use the best in class, right? And then we work with companies to help us with other aspects of our development, whether it's software development for applications. Again, there's many people who can help us with that. We're not going to build our own glucose meter because there's plenty of them out there. If we want to deliver a patient solution that uses that, then certainly we'll go find one and we'll bring it into the system. And that's the key. It allows us to be flexible and allows us to add resources as we need them, but not have them as part of our overall infrastructure.
Okay, so as far as go-to-market strategy goes, this is a very different marketplace as well, the consumer side. You have to be very close to the end application. I sort of, sitting on one end of the spectrum, medical device development, and on the other end of the spectrum being on the consumer side, the consumer piece almost looks a little bit, as soon as you get there, it's moved, and so it's very dynamic. Maybe you can talk about how Proteus goes about making sure that by the time they get there, the cheese hasn't moved and the applications have moved on.
Well, what you're talking about speaks again to this need to be flexible. And so another example of how we try to be flexible is the way that we're working through the regulatory requirements and clearances for our product. So our wearable monitor was approved in both Europe and the US in about 2010. And just this year in July, the ingestible sensor was approved in the US. It had been approved, cleared in Europe as in 2010 as well. So we now have a system that we can actually start to productize in both of those regions. We're now working on taking that particular device and building it into digital medicine. And so that particular device becomes almost an ingredient, and we can basically build multiple versions of digital medicine using different medications in different patient populations. And we just iterate that process over and over again. So we're not starting from scratch each time. We build on as we go. And I think that's the example of where the flexibility is critical, and where we're using that. The other piece of this is that we focus a lot on how we're going to integrate our technology into the existing infrastructure and existing manufacturing technology. So if we're going to be a consumer product, we have to be really inexpensive, and we have to be able to produce it in massive scale. So the iPhones and the tablets out there, those things are produced in many tens to hundreds of millions of units. And it's a very different sort of scale problem than most medical device companies ever have to deal with, unless you're building syringes and needles. And so from the very beginning, we focused with our adjustable sensor on how to integrate that into the existing manufacturing processes within pharmaceutical companies. So that when they look at the technology, they all see the value in it, but they also need to be comfortable with how they will build it into their business. Same thing with the wearable monitor. It can't be a $200 wearable monitor. It has to be so inexpensive that it could be thrown away after using it for a week. And so we've spent a lot of money and a lot of time investing in custom chips and high volume manufacturing, and partnering with companies like Avery Dennison to provide us with high volume Band-Aid-like manufacturing, as well as adhesive expertise that helps us to make something that not only is usable, really low cost, but actually comfortable to wear. And we can produce them literally on a machine that just turns them out without any human contact, essentially. So
great. Okay. So I guess we're getting into Q&A, our Q&A time. We got a couple different questions that we'll get to. Okay, first question has to do with the consumerization of the product and access to the sensor itself. These are not purchased directly. So these are not purchased directly. So what's the path to market right now? Maybe you want to elaborate on where you are in clinicals and kind of where you are in the spectrum of commercialization.
Sure. So the way that the system will come to market is that we're getting ready to launch a product in the UK shortly. And this particular, the first product to market is a co-ingestion model. So we don't have any digital drugs released yet or approved yet. We do have the adjustable sensor approved. And so we're going to market with a solution that is targeted at patients living with a chronic disease. It's nondescript, so any number of diseases. But one of the key items is that people are living with they're taking lots of different medications on a daily basis. In the UK, they have a system they call compliance packaging. It's essentially that the pharmacist will take your weekly medication and pack all of your medications into individual blisters for you. So as a patient, you just know to take 4 doses of medication each day, and all your medications for that time period are in that blister pack location. We're putting one of our digital devices in each one of those blister locations. And so that when the patient goes to take all of that medication, we'll actually have a record of that ingestion or dosing event. We're providing, along with that, and the key piece of that is we're providing an application that takes that information and the data that the wearable monitor collects and puts it into a way that the user and their caregivers can see how they're doing. So it's focused on people living with chronic disease. They're elderly. They're living at home. They don't want to go into a care home, and they have a family member or a loved one who's helping to care for them but isn't with them all day, and is really looking for a way of knowing how well their loved one's doing. Did mom get out of bed this morning? When did she get out of bed? Is she taking her medication? Has she been up and around? Did she make a sandwich? How is she sleeping at night? Just very general information that often is relayed with a lot of inaccuracy through the use of the phone call, the daily phone call, or the nagging phone call to ask if mom is doing what she's supposed to be doing. This application is a very simple web-based application that works on a smart device, and that device is something that the information that's shown is very basic, but it's something that the caregiver and the patient see the same information. And so this product is going to market in the UK. It's being sold through a pharmacy, and the pharmacist who already knows the patient population and the people that are on this particular product will recommend it to the patient. And so the patient will get that as part of their normal medication they already get from the pharmacist. So it'll come already prepackaged with their device, and they'll get that.
Great, thank you. Next question has to do with healthcare practitioners and the data. Now that you have the data, what do you do with it? Are there legal issues with it? What if you miss something? Maybe you want to talk about the purpose of the data, who it resides with, how it's actually used once you have the data, and maybe any even legal issues or ethical issues that are associated with it.
So this is always a challenging question. I think that the way we've dealt with this challenge is that from the very beginning, we believe that the patient knows the data. It's their data, it's their information, and they decide who gets to see the information. And so this product that we're launching in the UK is, the data actually doesn't go to the doctor. It's not intended to go to the doctor. It's intended to be used by the patient and by their caregiver, which is often not a professional caregiver, but it's a family member. Now, they can choose to invite their physician, their pharmacist, to see a portion of their data or all of their data. That's their choice. But it's something that they actually elect to do on the device itself. It's not something that occurs automatically. Now, we all know that the data is very interesting and it's valuable and is very important in the physician-patient conversation. And so as we move along in our journey, there's no question that data will start to move into the health system, into the caregivers, but that's certainly not an area that we focus on initially. We believe that it'll always be owned by the patient. They have to have the right to choose where it goes, and as we move down that journey, we'll figure out how that information gets transferred to the other people in the chain. Okay, great. Well, we're out of time, but we'll take just a little bit more for the last question right now, and it has to do with is the primary value in the system really guaranteeing compliance, pharmaceutical adhesion to taking their medications, or what are the issues around somebody possibly gaming the system? Maybe you want to go into elaborating further that how much of the value is in compliance, and where do you go with that? Yeah. So I'll start with talking about the cost of non-compliance. I think that if you don't know this, but half of all the medications that are prescribed are not taken as prescribed in the world. And the problem is that the professional healthcare delivery system doesn't know which half. And so doctors on a daily basis are prescribing hundreds of millions to billions of pills without any knowledge of whether or not the patients are actually complying with the direction of the physician. And this costs the health system hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars every year. And so it's very expensive, and everyone knows that non-compliance is a problem, and they know that it causes much of this healthcare cost. So we know there's a problem that exists. We have technology that can help to solve that problem. So the way we look at this is that the vast majority of people living with chronic disease would prefer not to be living with chronic disease. They're motivated to live better lives. Not everyone. People will game the system, there's no question. But for the vast majority of the people who are living with chronic disease, who actually want to get better, who want to understand their illness better and know how to actually affect how they feel, this information can provide them that. And it can provide them with the tools that when they go to talk to their doctor, they can say, look, I told you I'm taking my medication, it's not working. You need to do something for me. It's no longer the physician deciding whether or not he believes the patient based on an ongoing relationship. There's real data there, and they can act on that. And I believe that that's where the value comes in, because we will save the health system money, there's no question, but we're going to treat the people who really want to be treated, and we believe that they're going to actually come running for the information. Great. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this session. And again, if you have any questions after the session, please feel free to approach either Todd or myself. Thank you.